I wrote down a few things that to sort of keep me on track. One of the things that I really had the privilege of doing is actually spending a fair amount of time with Randy and Linda during the last 2 weeks of his life. And that was just really a privilege to be able to do that, and how God had provided for that. I was on medical leave, and then our Christmas plans got changed. I was able to help facilitate some of the medical issues, etc., but also just really be able to support them. And one of the things that just really struck me about 2 weeks before he died, he already knew. Death did not take him by surprise. He just had a sense for weeks, and that Sue confirmed that in conversations. And about, I guess it was about 12 days before, I was driving he and Linda home from the hospital, and Linda was asleep, and he said to me, "There are two things I need to take care of when I get home. There are just two things remaining that I have to take care of." I was just okay. And it was very hard for me to process all of that sometimes. And we one of the things I appreciate about Randy, and even during the last couple of weeks, is the ability to have honest conversations with him. And Robert touched on that. But there are very few Christians over the decades that I've been in the church where I have felt I've been able to talk as honestly with as I've been able to talk with Randy, whether it was in person or texting, and always feeling comfortable to do that. And I think that was a real gift that he gave us. And I saw Randy mature. I guess I met him a little over 25 years ago when I moved to Maryland. And I saw him transition from what I'm going to call the leadership of the charismatic movement in the 70s and 80s to mature into the leadership of the 90s and the 2000s. And there was a real transition and a real maturity that I just really appreciate about his willingness to grow and not being threatened by changing needs and what changes in what God was doing. I just really appreciate that about him. I appreciate him as a counselor. He did the premarital counseling for Rudy and I. And I was so thankful, since we were an older couple getting married, that he didn't inflict all the young engaged couple stuff on us. And one of the things that happened is the day before we were to meet with him, I had gotten a call asking that Rudy and I move overseas for a year right after we were married, right before we got married. And I was like, well, I can't do that. Maybe a couple months later. But I was like, oh my, I'm just about to get married, and now you were asking me to move overseas. And we talked to Randy the next day, and I was still a little perplexed by that. And he looked at us and said, I think that would be a great way for you to spend your first year first year of marriage. It's like, oh, I hadn't thought about it that way. But he was just really, he could actually, he could see things that so many other people could see. I appreciate him as a teacher. And he just not only knew scripture well, but he could tie scripture into so many other aspects of life. I appreciate him as a servant pastor, and all the little tasks that he took on that so many people in that level of seniority in the church normally would not, but he would see something that needed to be done and do it together with Linda. And then lastly, I just want to say how much, he said he had been watching Fred very closely over the last 6 months, and just really trusted that he was leaving the church in good leadership. And that was, it was just really very special for me to be able to have some of these conversations with him, and to see him transition in in a way that you rarely work with see people do, and knowing that he at one point a couple weeks before he died, and Rudy and I were visiting with him, and he and I always talked about his illness being very binary, that either he was going to come through all of this and recover, or he was not. That it wasn't a matter of him having a chronic illness. It was either yes or no. And either way, God had something different for him and had a different plan. And we were talking about that, and he gave me this odd expression. And I knew in that moment that he knew that his future was on the other side. And it was like there was no point talking about anything else. It was just sort of put a kibosh on discussing that perfectly. But that the way he accepted that and moved into that was just a real blessing in his concern for Linda in the midst of all of this. Like she and her trust, and Linda has said to me several times, Randy always believed in me more than I believed in myself. And if he says that I will come through this okay, I will. And I think that level of love and commitment is just something we can emulate all these things. Thank you.